Okay, it's a different one today in this video. We're going to be looking at the warehouse defense during Shanghai, Battle of Shanghai, the Sihang Warehouse, which you can see in the background. It's quite an interesting one to look at, especially for things like bow action, flames, because it's essentially a siege, and it's not very often you'll get a siege conflict, battle, whatever, during World War II. They were, especially in an urban environment such as Shanghai in 1937. So this is quite an interesting one to look at for wargamers, especially those with bolt action. I want a different sort of scenario. This is quite an interesting one to look at. So we'll head across and have a look and see what it's all about. Now, the defence of the warehouse was from October the 26th to 31st, 1937. And it stands as a pivotal moment in the Battle of Shanghai during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Now, this 4-day stand by Chinese forces against overwhelming Japanese opposition became a powerful symbol of national resistance and captured the attention of both Chinese populace and international observers. As part of the broader Battle of Shanghai, in August to November 1937, the Sihang Warehouse defences were orchestrated by the National Revolution Army under the commander Sihang Warehouse. They fortified themselves in the warehouse, which is a 6-storey concrete building and was owned by 4 Chinese banks, hence the name Sihang, which means 4 banks. The building's robust structure provided a critical defence against the Japanese artillery. The unit that was defending this warehouse was the 5th 24th Regiment of the 88th Division. It's comprised of roughly 400 to 500 soldiers, though this was later mythologized as 800. They fortified themselves in the warehouse, which is a 6-storey concrete building and was owned by 4 Chinese banks, hence the name Sihang, which means 4 banks. The building's robust structure provided a critical defence against the Japanese artillery. So from October the 26th, Japanese repeatedly launched assaults using a combination of artillery, ground troops and armoured vehicles. But due to the proximity of the international settlement, they had to constrain that attack somewhat. And defenders repelled those attacks with a combination of machine guns, small arm fire, grenades. Now, during the course of the battle, a civilian girl guide called Yang Hu-min famously swam the river from the British side to deliver a Republic of China flag, which was then raised under fire, symbolising an unyielding spirit. The flag raising incident amid enemy fire became quite a defining moment that were widely reported and boosting morale. Now, despite being outnumbered and out-equipped, the Chinese military held firm, leveraging the warehouse's design to their advantage. So on October the 31st, under international diplomatic pressure, the defenders retreated across the Sihang Creek to the international settlement, where they were disarmed and interned by the British authorities. Though militarily a tactical retreat, the defence succeeded in its psychological aim, which was galvanising the Chinese resistance. Tragically, the commander Xi was assassinated by collaborators in 1941 by 2 of his own, essentially 2 of his own men. Now, the Sihang Warehouse defence has been celebrated as a testament to Chinese courage, and post-war it's become a museum. Now, a lot of people refer to this as the Chinese Alamo, and it is quite a significant part of the war against the Japanese, because this was essentially the point in which proved that Japanese military wasn't invincible, and it also proved that the Chinese military could defeat the Japanese. It was quite a pivotal point in the war against Japan. So as you can see from the person just walked past, the wall on the side of the bridge doesn't really offer much cover. It reaches about waist height, so those that ran across would have had to have done so either bent over or just sprinted and hoped they didn't get hit by rifle fire. So just cross the bridge, and you see just by crossing that bridge, it's quite a distance to charge across, especially in the dark, especially under fire. So it's been quite a dangerous last aspect of the defence, was getting across that bridge whilst under enemy fire. Like I said, it doesn't really offer that much cover. It's quite a long distance to sprint whilst under fire. So yeah, it would have been quite a dangerous last aspect to the defence, and you know, testament to those that survived, really. So I was fortunate to be in Shanghai, so I shot the video there on location. If you're ever in Shanghai, it's worth going to visit the Sihang Warehouse Museum, because it tells the entire story of that defence, and they tell it quite well. Unfortunately, you aren't allowed to take any video in there, so I've got no video footage of the actual inside the warehouse. I was allowed to take photographs, so I've used plenty of the photographs throughout the video. It's a really nice, it's a museum and a memorial in one, for that defence and for the tell the story of the soldiers that lost their lives in that particular, I would say, battle within the Battle of Shanghai. Now, I said earlier in the film that it was a key moment in the war against Japan. That's my personal opinion, because I think it probably was a key moment. Up until then, Japan had pretty much steamrolled the Chinese forces, and that one little defense showed that Japan forces weren't invulnerable. They weren't undefeatable. They that small defense of that warehouse showed that China was capable of beating Japanese military. Now, the Japanese continued post the Battle of Shanghai to win more battles, especially in around some of the cities and stuff like that. But it slowly started turning in the favour towards China, and it was a slow process. And what the war in China did was bog down a huge chunk of the Japanese military. The idea behind them going into China was to get the resources that were in China. That would help their military machine, that would help their expansion and help their conquest of Asia. But because the Chinese military, both communists and nationalists, continued a dogged fight all the way to the end of World War II, Japan was never really able to take control fully of China, which meant they never really took control of all the resources in China. And that probably, to a large extent, it sort of slowed the Japanese war machine down, and it didn't allow them really to have the capabilities they were hoping to have to fight further in within Asia, because it didn't allow them to go much further than Burma, so they didn't go into India, and going into India would have been a prime sort of target for them. They also made the mistake of going up against the Americans far too early. I think they wanted to capture China, have those resources, build up the military machine before they went up against the Americans. But that wasn't the case. So the war in China is quite an interesting one, because it bogged down, like I said, it bogged down a huge chunk of the Japanese military. And the defense of Sihang is one of those interesting sort of turning points within World War II. It wasn't an immediate turning point, but it was a point in where the Chinese showed that they could beat the Japanese on the field of battle. But it would still take some time before they would start gaining more traction against the Japanese post this Battle of Shanghai. Anyway, I hope you like the video. This is a really good one for anyone that does World War II. I think it's an interesting small scenario to set up, or you could do it in a number of smaller games and build up to like a big campaign of the whole defense. And it's a great sort of like siege conflict as well to do in World War II, especially with things like bolt action or rapid fire. Anyway, that's all for this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you next time.